Do you think you could survive being tortured and sleep deprived for a whole 44 days, with barely any rest, food, or water, and you're aware that you're being tortured all this time? Would your mind or body break first before you end up dying? Because some people are mentally strong, but the physical pain will hurt them more, while some can endure physical pain and withstand lots of pain, but they can't withstand simple stress or any inconvenience because they do not have a strong mind enough to handle the pain. So in today's case, we will look at a 17-year-old girl from Japan who had to go through both mental and physical pain and much worse, including mutilation of her sex parts, gang, rape, and many more. She went to the brink of hell before she died and experienced pain that no one should have to even withstand for one day. So how she even managed to survive 44 days of this is beyond my knowledge, and it goes to show a bold spirit and strength in the face of the ugly foul humans who kidnapped, torture, and eventually killed her. Even the torture method includes insane creativity in a bad way, straight out of a horror movie. Now let's get into the full story. But before we do, be aware that this story is highly graphic and include essay and torture. Also, please leave a case recommendation you would like to see and leave a like and subscribe. Thank you. The story of Junko Furuta is a harrowing tale. She was a young woman from Japan who was brutally attacked and held captive for 44 days. Her captors subjected her to extreme violence, sexual assaults, and torture. Despite a plea for death, they continued to inflict unimaginable pain on her. She was graped by over 100 men, beaten with various objects, burned with hot wax and lighter, and many more. Junko Furuta was a 17-year-old Japanese teenager who was born on January 18, 1971, in Misato in Saitama Prefecture, and she had one older brother and a younger brother, and she attended Yashio-Minami High School and worked a part-time job. So overall, she was very well liked and popular at school. One of the people that admired Junko was Hiroshi. He was a well-known school bully that bragged about his connection to the famous and dangerous Yakuza group, and he used this to bully others and take their food and money whenever he liked, and he behaved however he wished because he had connections. Hiroshi asked out Junko, and she rejected him because she is not impressed by his bullying or bragging about Yakuza connections, and this angered Hiroshi. So on November 25th, 1988, on her way home from school or work, I think, Junko was kidnapped by Hiroshi and his friend. The way they kidnapped her goes to show how evil, conniving, and premeditated their attack was. She was biking home from a part-time job. Unknown to her, Hiroshi, 18 at the time, and his friend, Misato, 16, were in the area. They were looking for local women to rape because they did this a lot. They would kidnap women and hire them and then threaten them after that they should not go to the police, because if they do, they will find them and do worse to them. So they were already used to doing these sort of things, and they like to brag about it. They attack women walking around in parks, going out, or just going about their daily business. Hiroshi and his friend Misato were out looking for women to assault, as they usually did. The two saw Furuta on a bike on her way home from work, I think. Hiroshi kicked Junko off a bike because she rejected Hiroshi previously, and Hiroshi wanted to take a sick, twisted revenge on her by awarding her. And Misato, Hiroshi's friend, came acting like a normal civilian that was looking to help Junko, and he chased off Hiroshi. But please remember, this was all pretend. So Misato was in on the plan here, and he wasn't actually wanting to help Junko. So Misato came in as a random civilian that came off to chase off Hiroshi, and he offered to walk Junko back home, and she accepted his request because he came off as nice and he was able to scare off Hiroshi. But she didn't know Minato and Hiroshi had planned this, and it was all part of the plan. So instead of taking her home, he forced and took her to a warehouse and threatened to kill her because he has connection to criminals. And after this, he awarded her, and then he brought her to an hotel where he awarded her again. And then he called his other friends, including Oguro Joe and Watanabe Yashushi, I think. And they went on to further and do more things to her that I can't speak of. So after he left the hotel, he dragged Junko with him to meet the other three boys in a nearby park. And they had connections to Yakuza and threatened to kill Furuta's family if she tried to escape. The group had raped women before, but they usually let them go afterward. But they wouldn't let Furuta go, as they saw her special and really beautiful, and they felt like they should keep her for longer for their sake fantasy. So the group took her to Minato's house because they were looking for a house to keep her at, and they thought Minato's parents wouldn't mind, and Minato also be a safer place to hide her. So they kept her at Minato's house in Ayashi in Itachi ward due to the fact that they could hide her better there. And they introduced her to Minato's parents and brother as his girlfriend. And she had to go along as she was scared. Then they went on to gang rape her with Minato's parents in the house. So this wasn't like the parent went out and then they did it. No, the parents were in the house and they still had the balls and the guts to do this while the parents were in the house. This shows like the parent didn't really raise the kids right, in my opinion. And with the parents in the house, they did many more things that I'll go on to discuss. I don't know if the parent thought that she was just chilling with them or whether she ran away from home, because it didn't seem like they asked the son Minato why Junko was staying at the house for that long. And I'm sure they would have seen the injuries and torture inflicted on her and heard the sound of them torturing and abusing her. So it seemed like the parent gave birth to horrible kids, because how can someone be in your house for more than 40 days and you don't notice anything wrong with them or any changes in them that does not appear normal? So you don't notice injury, you don't notice them crying and being punched all night, all day. So on November 27, Furuta's parents called the police because she has been missing for more than 2 days now. When a captor found out, they didn't let her go, but rather they coerced her into calling her parents because they threatened to kill her family, as the group knew where her family lived. They found her address in a notebook, and this gave them more power over her. So they use it as a way to control her. And they make sure that she does not tell her parent that she's been kidnapped or the fact that she's been tortured. So she had to tell them that she's run off to a friend's house and she's safe, and she does not want her parent to contact her again or tell the police that she's missing again. And due to this reason, her parent told the police that she didn't run off, but instead she went off to a friend's house, and the police should stop their investigation. The torture inflicted upon Furuta goes beyond anyone's worst nightmare, which results in her enduring 44 days of hells and resulting in her death. The four boys beat, graped, and sodomized her multiple times a day. They also invited their criminal friends to join and inflict more torture. One of these incidents involved 12 men at the same time awarding her, and in that 44 days, close to 100 men will end up partaking in this devious, depraved act. But the four friends, including Minato and Hiroshi, were the main ones. They were the main perpetrators who raped and assaulted her most of the days. They calculated they raped her at least 400 times within 44 days, which is about 9 to 10 times a day. Imagine in 44 days, 400 times with up to like 100 men. That is a lot, and that is evil. They used her as a source of entertainment. For example, when they were tired or bored of raping her, they would make her dance for them so they could get aroused. and could grape her more. They inserted hot light bulbs into her privates and they would ensure it shattered. You know, they also inserted lit fireworks, scissors, mixed skewers, and a lot more into her private part, both from the front and back. This caused tearing, bleeding, and burns to her part. It seems like they were experimenting and competing to see who could come up with the worst depraved torture method they could use on her. They used her as a punching bag by hanging her on the ceiling and pummeling her, which led to broken ribs and internal bleeding because her organs were damaged. Now, I know we're all thinking, where were these kids' parents? Because there is no way Minato parents or brother didn't hear or witness any of this, so it seems like his parents were scared of their son and they didn't want to involve the police in the matter. But they could have just called the police as a concerned neighbors and gave the police the address. This would have ended the torture and saved Junko's life way earlier, considering they went on to do more things, more damage to her, which we're going to end up discussing. But please be aware, some of them are truly horrific. They poured hot wax onto her eyelid, stuck sewing needles in her breast. They even ripped off her left nipples with pliers because they felt like it, I think, which is really horrible. They dropped iron barbells onto her torso. This will end up damaging her organs more, as we'll see. They caused further internal damage to the point where she lost total control of her bladder and total bowel control. So she would soil herself because her muscles are damaged. And this will annoy the boys because they looked for any reason to get angry at her. Whenever she had convulsions, they say she was faking them and they continued to beat her. Near the end of her 44 days torture, it took over an hour for her to crawl downstairs to use the bathroom due to her injury, so her legs weren't walking anymore. And like all her organs were damaged, so she literally had to crawl downstairs. And they thought she was faking it, which makes no sense. It just goes to show how horrible and depraved they are. They starved her and forced her to eat live cockroaches, and they force feed her water so that she could pee a lot, and then they make her drink her own pee. And it doesn't stop there, they also peed on her and make her drink their own urine as well, as a form of torture. And they will find any reason they can make up to beat her. For examples, burns on her leg became infected due to candle wax and firework they used to torture her. And the pus in the infection started to smell. So instead of them giving her life-saving treatment, they beat her more because her wound got infected. They forced her to sleep outside in the balcony in the middle of winter. And she wasn't able to breathe through her nose at the moment because I think they broke the bones in her nose. And I think she had like a blocked nose as well. So which added more to the torture and the pain that she was enduring during that time. But despite all this, there was 2 occasions where she nearly managed to escape. But police failed her both times due to the utter incompetence and lack of care. There was an incident where Minato and the other main captors forced and bullied one of the younger, low-level Yakuza boys, and they forced him into graping Junko. And when he got home, he told his brother, and the police were informed about this and what happened. And the boy gave them the address. 2 police officers went to Minato's house. They spoke to his parents about the allegation, and when the parents invited the police in to check and search the home, the police declined and they apologized for the trouble, which makes no sense. Maybe they thought, oh yeah, since they're inviting us into the house, then they have nothing to hide. But I think the parents were actually trying to help Junko and telling the police, yeah, please come in and check out the situation. Because I think Minato parents were afraid of him. So this was like the last chance to kind of maybe invite the police into the house so they can discover what's going on. But the police were just like, oh, no worries, we don't want to come in. We apologize, sorry for disturbing you, which makes no sense. And after this happened, and after the public discovered what happened, the two police officers did end up losing the job because they didn't follow protocol, and she could have been saved because it was on the 16th day, which means this was pretty early on into the captivity, and it was on the 16th. So I remember it was on the 16th day when they went over to check Minato house. And also in December, she would also call the police on the phone she found, I think, laying about. They forget to keep it away or hide it from her. And she found it and managed to call the police. But before she could speak to the police, the four of them came in and they saw what was happening. And the boys would set her on fire as a punishment because they saw her calling the police, which makes no sense. But I mean, nothing makes sense with them because they're pretty horrible human beings. And after this incident, they went on to drop weight on her hand to crush the bones in them. And now she couldn't use her hand to hold anything, including a phone, to call the police. Once they noticed they couldn't use Junko for their sick games anymore due to the injuries and damage her body has taken, and she was ready to die, but they kept her alive just to torture her more and decided they would instead go out to look for a different girl or woman to grape. And a 19-year-old woman was the victim that day, and she would later on play a part in the arrest for raping her, but also for the death of Junko. After 44 days, on January 4, 1989, Hiroshi and the other boys decided to play mahjong, and they challenged Junko to a game of mahjong. Despite all the injuries and swollen face and broken arms and bones, she managed to beat them at this game. And this made them angry, which led to her being tortured for more than an hour. They poured lighter fluid on her body and face and set her on fire with a candle while she was still alive. And she was trying to put out the fire but couldn't, and they continued to punch and kick her. Due to the pus emerging from her wound and her burns, and due to the infection she's been battling with, this would lead to her death because her body had given up and couldn't carry on anymore. So they decided to get rid of her body, and in order to hide the evidence, they placed her in an empty 55-gallon drum, and they filled it with wet concrete. And they waited for it to harden before putting it into a truck and dumping it in an abandoned lot in Wakashi, Koto Ward, Tokyo. In January, police arrested two of the boys, Oguro Joe and Watanabe, and they were arrested for the kidnapping and assault of the 19-year-old woman they raped in December. If you remember, I said she would end up leading to their arrest. And when they were being questioned, police made an offhand comment about a different murder case, which the boys were not suspecting. But the boys thought the police discovered Junko bodies, and that was part of the reason they were arrested. But the police didn't even know Junko died because they thought she ran away from home. And Watanabe would end up confessing about the murder of Junko to the police because they thought the police were onto him, and our body will be discovered next day by the police. And the police will go on to examine the body and discover the damage to her private part and the fact that she was pregnant. They arrested the four boys in April, and the infuriating part of this is they only charged them with rape, and basically the equivalent of an accidental death. Police also hid their identity, their names and their pictures to protect them from the public. Joe's mother also blamed Junko for ruining her son's life, and when they were caught for their bad crimes, their parents would end up blaming the victim. This shows that bad parents give birth to these bad kids. So on July 31, 1989, the trial began, and the four boys were known as A, B, C, and D. They during the trial to hide their identities. Furuta Junko was identified as E, also known as the victim. Because of how evil their crime was, the boys were tried as adults in Tokyo District Criminal Court instead of the usual juvenile or family court. But they still had juvenile privileges, if that makes sense. So they were being tried as adults, but the juvenile rules and privilege still applied to them. Despite the fact that the court protected the boys' identity, they didn't protect Junko's identity, and it was all over the magazines and televisions. This upset a lot of people as they viewed the court to care more about the criminals than the victims. Another person they did not sit well with was Anada Kazuyoshi, and he was an editor-in-chief for Shunka Bunsho, a magazine company, and they decided to release the four criminals' name, as well as the fact that the beast don't have human right. And even though publishing the name violated juvenile law, they made an exception because it was a terrible incident. And all four boys were sentenced on July 20, 1990, and they received a short sentence for the crimes committed. Even though Hiroshi, who started all this, was an adult at the time, he was sentenced to 20 years, but his previous sentence was 17 years. But he tried to appeal, and this made the judge angry, which led to him increasing his sentence by 3 years, from 17 years to 20 years. And the judge did not want to sentence him to life in prison because 20 years is the maximum sentence you can give someone before life imprisonment. So if the judge was to give him 21 years, that would be an equivalent of life imprisonment. So 20 years was the most he could do before giving him life in prison. Oguro Joe was sentenced to 8 years in juvenile prison. Misato was sentenced to, I think, to serve 5 to 9 years in prison. And Watanabe was sentenced to 5 to 7 years in prison. And he did not reoffend after his release. But prison did not change the rest, however, as they committed more crimes after their release. Joe went to change his name to Kama Saku when he was released from prison and adopted by a friend. Now, prison did not change him because he came out and tried to kill again. In July 2004, police arrested him for kidnapping and beating up an acquaintance because they thought the acquaintance and his girlfriend were cheating behind him. And he served 7 years in prison, and that is one less year than he got for committing murder, which makes no sense, to be honest. Also, Hiroshi was arrested for fraud, but he did not face any prison time. And Misato, whose house was used to commit the crimes, changed his name to Shinji, and in 2018 was arrested for an attempted murder after he beat a 31-year-old man with a baton and tried slashing his throat with a knife. Today's story was a heavy and sad one, but do not let the despair put you down. I know we all wished more justice was served, but at least this story is well known now, and Junko memory will live forever. Thanks for listening. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I would appreciate it. And also, if you would like to see any case discussed, then please let me know down in the comment. Thank you. Bye.